Okay, and
Yeah, well, it's recorded to the cloud if you select record to cloud.
yeah, that's what I did. So actually, you're not
Okay.
recording. We got the warning. I'm not sure if you got it. So hi everyone, thank you so much for joining for another iteration of the MicroProfile technical call. The meeting notes have been shared on the chat and they're also on the calendar. So please feel free to go over there and fill in your attendance. I'm not sure if all of you have any chance to look into some of the agenda items. We have a couple of them, so it seems that someone added a few more, which are related to MicroProfile 4.1 and 5.0 status. You can probably start with those because they're probably going to be some quick discussions around that, and then we can move to the other ones that probably going to take some more time. Okay, MicroProfile 4.1 status. I'm not completely sure if we progress any further from last week. Edwin, do you have any? Sorry.
Yeah, I was forgot to add my name to the agenda item. I was like, I'm going to give an update, so I would.
Oh, it's fine.
Love to. Yeah, so I submitted the IP log request last week, and I have been notified by the Eclipse that they're going to look at the project to finish the release review. It will be done at so we're good on track there.
Okay. The other thing that I know that was missing, and maybe we can have a very quick look into that, especially because it was somehow there was somehow a discussion. So let me I can probably share the screen. Here we go. So I need to search the MicroProfile. I'm not sure. I'm not completely sure if that was on. I think it's a MicroProfile parent. But basically, it was the pool. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Do you mean the TR you posted?
Yes.
That's under MicroProfile.
It's probably on parent.
No, parent,
No.
Roberto.
Okay, no, sorry, just MicroProfile. Yes.
Yes.
This one and this one. Okay, because this is kind of sitting here for some time. Let me just increase this a little bit. And so to give some context on this, there was like a month or maybe like more than a month ago, we discussed to add the compatible implementation definition, and that required to set or at least specify which TCKs were required to pass or to claim compatibility with MicroProfile. And I believe that we agree that at least I posted, I went over the meeting again when we were discussing that, and there was, the discussion was, and I guess the agreement was to list things that were not required, especially regarding CDI stuff, or even JAX-RS stuff, and that was with the discussion around AJB integration or expression language support, right? Because those are even excluded from the platform POM. And I think that's where we're getting some disagreement now on the pull request. So do you have any comments on this? I mean, I know that like Kevin was the one person that think that we should not declare things about being optional.
Yeah, I commented on that, but after that, I got past me. So I have to relook into it, honestly.
I mean, I'm okay to drop. So
Yeah.
the let me just show this really quick. So right now the proposed changes was to, and I haven't got into. So I'm just going to skip the JDK version for now. But basically, those are the proposed changes, which list the optional requirements, and those were linked with some of the things that were discussed on one of the technical calls. I even linked in the comments the exact section of the recording where we're discussing that about listing this stuff. But apparently, some people now disagree on that. So I'm okay if we remove this. I mean, especially because if we say that only the MicroProfile T3Ks at this point are required to claim compatibility, you don't really require to pass the CGI TCK for now because of these limitations. But we need to have a decision if we want to keep it as is, or at least to have this proposal to add these things into the spec, or just remove it. I'm fine either way.
I think personally, I think since we already said we only require the MicroProfile TCKs to pass, the others being kind of not required, and also the Jakarta core profile is going to address this. So I don't think we will need to go extra miles saying, okay, this is not required, because the whole thing is not required. So, and then it's no, I don't think it's add much value, because there's no like a separate TCK to verify. Actually, this is not required. Also, we don't have the discussion to see go through the whole list. What is not required? What is required? We just keep it a very kind of.
Well, I actually went and read the CDI spec and JAX-RS spec and compared and matches with what we are doing in MicroProfile. So I came up with those big topics. Maybe, of course, maybe I missed something, but I did that. I did that investigation. It's not something that I took out of my head.
In this case, I think this kind of would be good in the like put in the Jakarta EE core profile, read the issue there as well. So read the issue there, because if we list here and eventually core profile come up, and actually it doesn't address the things we are trying not to support. So I think is we just don't we just say the whole thing is not required, but the things that we don't plan to support maybe is make into the Jakarta EE core profile requirement.
The comment that I have on this optional list is not that I'm against this optional list, it can be useful, but as you mentioned, you did an investigation, you probably have all the pieces, but what if we miss something? Then there can be some kind of discussion later on. Is this really required, yes or no? So it can be a source of frustration later on if we find
Sure.
something
I mean,
else.
I completely understand. I'm completely in favor of removing this. As I mentioned first, and I mean, it's not, I mean, I don't want to like hold to this too much, but I mean, here, if you follow this link, which basically, you're not going to be able to see it, but basically this goes into one of the technical call that we had like a month ago, where we're discussing the exact same topic, and basically we agreed to make this list. That's why I submitted that pull request with that list. Now, and it's totally fine if we change the opinion, and now if we think that that's not okay, I'm completely fine to just remove that. The only reason why, Sorry, the only reason why I did was because we discussed that previously, and then we agreed that to have that list.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah, I
then.
agree. But sorry, Emily, but I agree that that list was a good idea, but now thinking of it, it's still a good idea, but maybe if we miss something, it could cause us more the troubles than the benefits. Go ahead, Emily. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you made right. I think it's a quite good comment there. However, I do think this list is useful. I think maybe it's added to the core profile requirement, because at the moment it's discussing the Jakarta core profile. So basically, I think this list is useful right there. So we place the requirement there instead of in the downstream. We put in the upstream, and maybe there's a kind of they discuss, and maybe we can refine the list and etc.
Okay,
So I also I think removing from here is a good idea. So
sorry, who's trying to talk?
Oh, it was just me. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so this, Emily, if we do something like that, then I think we need to include both the CDI, I don't know what you want to call them, the optional pieces or whatever, but the CDI piece and the JAX-RS, because JAX-RS is one that's
yes,
actively being discussed as to whether or not, what are we doing for JAX-RS 4.0? But I think, yes, I think that type of input to the core profile, I think would be very good. And I think that's what, that was kind of the core of my comment, is it's like, okay, we, MicroProfile, we don't want to get into the business of trying to subdivide these specs that are produced by another organization or another group. And so feeding our requirements into them, I think would be the right way to do it.
yeah, exactly. It's a kind of CDI we emphasize a lot. I think we do need to read this same thing with JAX-RS. I think I commented as in the core profile as a comment. I think we need to make that more concrete with JAX-RS.
Okay, so I'll update the PR to remove the optional list. I can provide that feedback to the core profile, and it should simplify a little bit more this PR. So having the only remaining pieces about to define what means to claim compatibility, and I think we agree on that already. So it's only passing the MicroProfile QC case for the current version. Then we'll see what happens on the next few versions. And the other one was to reword the text a little bit to say that JDK8 is not mandatory, but can be supported if you want to claim compatibility. We discussed that maybe, I don't know if it was like a couple of weeks ago or like months ago, but I think we also were in agreement that we could relax the spec a little bit and don't make JDK8 mandatory, but make it optional. Or make it supported, right? So I mean, it's just like a
right.
You could certify on 11, but you don't require to certify on 8, because right now, if you let me see, if you look, at least from my understanding, if you look at the current words, it says just saying that Java SE compatibility must be maintained, right? So when I read this, it's just saying that you have to certify at least on JDK8. And what we're saying is we are free to provide support for any Java SE version and beyond.
Yeah, I think we were in agreement on that.
Okay. So if you're okay with this, I'll update the PR with the things we discussed over here, and hopefully we should be able to move this forward.
Roberto?
Yeah.
This is Kevin again. So
Yeah.
looking at the changes here, the original wording talked about Java SE8. Now, I know this is what we're kind of arguing about, but the compatibility must be maintained. don't we need to say somewhere, I mean, we are still compiling the APIs at Java SE8, right? Don't we need to specify that somewhere?
We can say that that the source level is 8, right? But
Right. Do we explicitly say that somewhere?
Is
We
that not
don't.
is that not more on our side, that we make sure that if we provide the APIs and the artifacts, that they are
We don't, but
SE8s,
in
and
the,
it's not about the vendor who tries to get the certification or a compatibility?
yes, I mean this sentence it's referring to MicroProfile implementations, right? So I believe it's okay that we don't specify that particular portion, right? Because if the API, if MicroProfile API is only source 8, then the vendors already have to support the API as is, right? So if they're not able to run it on JDK 15 or 17 for whatever reason, because the API doesn't support it, then it's our issue, right? But if they can run the API as is, which we already know that's source 8 on any JDK version, then it's fine if they support any JDK version. Isn't that correct?
So the previous line, libraries in use, leverage like new features provided in Java SE. Does that indicate that the compile level is Java 8?
Right.
Yes, and the runtime could be a higher version, and you can run the TCK with a higher version than
Right.
8.
Yeah, I think we are okay.
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's because all of us are like some people are like native English speakers, some don't, like myself. And when I read this, I have like a different understanding, right? So when I read like Java SE8 compatibility must be maintained, I read it that you have to maybe some people are thinking on the source level. I'm thinking at the runtime level. I'm thinking that you have to be able to run on a JDK8 runtime.
Yeah,
And
and that's, yep, I totally agree with the confusing wording that we have here, because when, in this context, when I read Java SE8 compatibility, I'm thinking the source level compatibility, the API compatibility, but other people could be reading that to say, oh, the compatibility or the compatible implementation must support Java SE8. So yeah, the wording's not good here, but I'm just wondering if the proposed wording is too open. Because then someone could provide, I mean, okay, so here's where we could get caught. If we had signature tests, like we do for Jakarta EE APIs, if we had signature tests, then we would have an issue of a compatible implementation that only supported Java SE11 and compiled all the APIs at Java SE11, they wouldn't pass the signature tests. Now, we currently don't have that in place. So it's, you know, I'm just kind of hypothesizing here, but that's the concern that I have, where we're, you know, I think we need to be clear that the APIs that we produce need to be at Java SE8 source level.
Yeah, we could add one more sentence saying the MicroProfile APIs are compiled in Java SE8.
Yeah.
Make it clear. Yeah.
okay,
Let's
so
make it
let's redefine or refine this sentence a little bit to separate between runtime and source level, because I think that's the confusion happening over here.
Yep.
And make it a little more clear, and then everyone can just read the proposal and
Yep.
put their input. So I can.
That would be
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll rewrite the PR and put my proposal from my understanding we discuss over here, and then we'll figure that out later. Okay.
So can I ask, did I understand correctly? Are we going to remove the optional requirement parts of the PR, or is it?
So we
going to
want to.
stay?
So okay. So let's from the free themes that are here is, so the optional features on CDI Jax, we're going to remove that.
Okay. Yeah.
So that those are not going to be included. The TCK definition, we already agreed on that. So you only require to pass the MicroProfile TCKs to claim compatibility. And the Java SA requirement, we agree that any compatible implementation may certify on any JDK version higher than 8, but not require 8. And we make a clarification that the source level of the APIs are still going to be 8.
Yeah. So that's okay. Clear. Thanks.
Okay, moving forward on the 4.1 stuff. So on health, we open up the vote. So please go and vote. As far as I know, I'm not sure. Martin, are you here? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Oh, so everything on health is it's done, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
From my
So
perspective, only ballot to end, and then I can release.
Okay, so we only need the ballot to pass. So just go there and vote, and we should be good to go.
So
Do we have a, yeah?
So for this is the kind of for the spec wise. So this PR, there's a Adam, when you have I can't remember, have you done another PR about the 4.1 changes already?
Sorry, did I have a PR or what did you say?
Yeah, so the list in the umbrella spec and list that was changed in the 4.1.
No, wait.
Okay, okay. In that case, I will work with you on an issue, and then you will be able to do because we need to list what's in the 4.1.
In the Git project, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, check. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that concludes the 4.1 status. Do we have anything else on 4.1? Okay, so moving to 5.0. So Emily, you've been working on this. You want to provide your update?
Yeah. So basically, I updated the MicroProfile parent, and then to pull in all the Decatur EE Decatur EE9. Also, I did a release for that. So it's the current the parent POM the 2.0 will have all the Decatur EE9 APIs for the CDN, etc. And also I opened a PR on the MicroProfile config. So it's so hopefully Roberto, you will take another look. And we can agree on that PR, and then I can merge that and then to be able to create a release candidate, and then we will work on the implementation to consume the API. And basically based on my experience with the MicroProfile config update from Java X to Decatur is quite straightforward. And then the ones is kind of I can get an implementation to pass all the TCKs, and then it's kind of I will share my experience and etc. Other spec can follow the similar pattern. So far, is looks quite good. So that's pretty much about 5.0.
Okay. Do we have any other spec that wants to do this work right now? Or, I mean, in my opinion, I think we should let config do the work first, and then we can document the process and replicate it across all the other ones. But I just want to make sure that no one else wants to do this work at the same time as config.
Yeah, I agree. So that's why I think do the config first. However, if someone is willing to start now, and yeah, that's fine.
Well, I think that if someone wants to start right now or about now, they should synchronize with you.
Yeah.
And especially, I think we should document either like on a wiki page, on GitHub or whatever other media, some of the rules about how we're going to do the branching when required. So for instance, remember where we had the parent POM where they had a couple of fixes. So because
Yeah.
right now the last version of every spec may not be exact as is the last version. So it may have like unreleased changes.
Yeah.
So that may require to have like separate branches. So I think that all of that should be documented. So I mean, it's not that because it's hard to figure out. It's just to make sure that everyone in the project and for all the specs follows the same pattern.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was thinking to document when I finish. Actually, I could document as I go along. I think is for other specs is the first thing is to use the parent POM straight away to reduce. I mean, this is reduce a lot of effort to get started. And then is kind of use the version 2.0, and actually I also I mean wrote a kind of very I've used a very simple like the directory replacement script. That's quite easy to replace JavaX to Jakarta. So it's yeah, I will start a document the process, and as I go along, I will document as a Google Doc, put in the shared drive, and then we can maintain. Once we finish, we can put in the wiki.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you have any other comments about MicroProfile 5?
No. No.
Well, I mean, that was for everyone, not just for you.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, if you have any other comments, you can go ahead. But the question was for the entire audience. So apparently not. So let's keep working on that and move forward. So the next one of the next agenda items, and I added that, and I mean, this is probably going to be like I don't want to turn this into like a huge discussion, but it was mostly to align and to have a more conceptual chat about when should we create specification. I mean, all of these was generated, or at least it was about the discussion we had on the mailing list because of open telemetry, right? And I think, and I mean, we had these discussions in the past before, and I mean, I'm bringing this up again because I think we need to have a more clear view on when should we create a specification, even though we have like the working group and the working group can vote on. But I think there's other things and some other topics that we should discuss, right? So, and this is not only related with open telemetry, right? It's some things for us to think about. It's kind of like, hey, is there any point to have a specification when there is only a single implementation of something, right? In the past, and John did mention that in the last call, where we have the sandbox for us to play and do stuff. So maybe should we do something on the sandbox before trying to put something into a spec before? So I mean, there are like multiple things about this. We can start with the open telemetry talk. I mean, by the end of the thread, it seems that some alignment was achieved. I think everyone agrees that we should look into open telemetry. I believe that not all of us agree that open telemetry should become a spec yet, at least without any further investigation. And if you look into open telemetry, I mean, open telemetry itself, it's already an implementation of an API, which there is implementation for a lot of other languages. There already has some other some specs that the OpenTelemetry group wrote. So maybe one opportunity for us is to actually get involved with those groups and try to push our stuff over there instead of us trying to make something different, or at least something that just wraps their stuff over here. I don't know. I mean, those are just like brainstorming. And I know that I've seen that Bruno is here. I know that Bruno has some ideas about that as well. So maybe Bruno can say something about that.
So yeah, so my idea behind this OpenTelemetry and what I thought when Emily first sent the email was.
Whoa.
So was that hey, open tracing is end of life, and here's a good alternative for us to move our microservices to with the tracing part. Also, I like the idea of unifying observability around open telemetry with the logs and the metrics and so on. Even if nowadays most people are using micrometer for that, but that's fine. But then people were mentioning that, okay, maybe it's okay not to have that on MicroProfile. But then, so if MicroProfile is the Java Enterprise standard for microservices, how we can justify that we don't have observability on it? It's kind of central in all this discussion of how to create specs around microservices. And I'm okay if we don't create a separated wrapper around OpenTelemetry. I think we should probably learn from what we did on OpenAPI and other things. Maybe contributing to OpenTelemetry itself should be something. Maybe creating an OpenTelemetry MicroProfile client instead of just having the MicroProfile Java. It's the way to go. I don't know. And I think we should explore these options on the sandbox, as you mentioned. And that's my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, so I sorry, let me just add something else. So I also invited Ken. So some of you may remember Ken. He used to be with us beforehand. And Ken has been working with OpenTelemetry for a while, and he's been leading the efforts on the Quarkus side to adopt OpenTelemetry. So he has some experience on the implementation side of things. And I think that Ken can also give us like his overview on what's the current state of OpenTelemetry from his efforts of implementing stuff. Ken, are you there?
Yeah, I don't know, Emily, if you want to say your piece first, and then I'll chime in.
Thank you, Ken. Welcome back. So it's I think is one thing like just clarify the position for this. I think is a kind of one thing is when I say MicroProfile OpenTelemetry, I don't like have a precondition. There must be a MicroProfile OpenTelemetry coming out from the the group and etc. This is purely investigate. And what's the future of open tracing, right? So basically it's fine, is maybe the current open tracing is kind of we can directly wrap OpenTelemetry and add a few sentences in the open tracing spec. Is this spec is still relevant, and implementation just the package OpenTelemetry. That's fine as well. So the whole thing is is just the start investigation. So it's nothing else. Yeah, I'm done. I just trying to level set. Okay, Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd say I think investigation is good, but it should certainly happen in the sandbox. I feel that creating a MicroProfile open telemetry repository from the get-go kind of puts us on a path of we're expecting a spec to exist at some point, which then kind of makes it hard to back away from actually, no, we don't need a spec for this because of XYZ. So I feel like having that repo there and potentially having discussions there sets up expectations around what the outcome is going to be before we even have an idea of what that outcome is. In terms of open telemetry itself, tracing side of it has been GA as a spec since early February, I believe. Metrics, if it isn't yet, it will be in the next couple of weeks. Logs, I think, is a bit further away. And there's many facets to the open telemetry project that people need to understand, that there's an API that is a polyglot API specification that is then implemented in Java, Go, JavaScript, Rust, Python, all that kind of stuff. But the key piece that's cross-language is their semantic conventions, which define what things are called when we're writing traces or metrics. So it's the names of those things, the labels or attributes associated with them. They're all aligned, so we get to a place where, irrespective of what language something is written in, we can observe and monitor it with the same tools because they're all aligned. I guess one other thing to note is that right now there's not a lot of what's the right way to say this? I guess consistency in cloud providers for open telemetry yet. Obviously, AWS is kind of ahead of the pack because they're heavily involved in open telemetry. But GCP and Azure, I believe, are a bit further behind. So there's no consistency in terms of what cloud providers are doing around open telemetry yet. So it's certainly premature for an application specification side to be defining what should be done. And it's also worth noting that, yes, open tracing is, I might have used this term in the past, but I'm not sure end of life is the right term at present. It's certainly not actively maintained, though I'm sure if there was a CVE raised, it would probably be fixed. And the project itself won't be kind of shelved permanently in any kind of way until open telemetry reaches I can't remember what I heard the point is. I think it's got to be out of incubating in the CNCF, maybe to incubating phase, which I think is what open tracing is right now in CNCF. At any rate, it needs to get to the same level that open tracing is at before they will consider shelving open tracing. And then separate to that is that open telemetry has a shim for open tracing, which allows you to use the open tracing APIs in your code, but it's actually open telemetry underneath. So maybe that's a possible short-term step to look at, is utilizing the shim so that no APIs or anything need to change, but what's underneath is then compatible with the new world of open telemetry. Yeah, so I think that was a lot of verbal diarrhea on my part. I guess if there's any questions or anything in particular anyone has.
I think, yeah, thank you, Ken. I think this is a great, summary about what's for the open telemetry. I think it's fine to use the sandbox at least to list the possible kind of solutions, right? So we can a possible path we can kind of go and so put them. I mean, how to get open telemetry into MicroProfile. I think it's it will be a great, probably is a one kind of, if it's, you say is if open tracing APIs can still continue to be supported, and but underneath is open telemetry. I think maybe this is could be a quite nice outcome for this experiment as well.
Yeah, for me, the remark that you say, for instance, that sandbox will more or less automatically lead to some kind of new specification is a bit premature, I guess. The sandbox is there.
I didn't say that. I said an open,
Okay.
a MicroProfile open telemetry repo, which has been created, gives the expectation that a spec will exist.
Okay, then, but to come back then to that sandbox thing, for me, it's not that if something is started within sandbox that it automatically will become a specification, and that there is some kind of discussion and voting, I guess, informal or otherwise, that says, okay, what we have done now in the sandbox, these are the results, and is this good enough to get started on a specification and in which format? So if there is indeed already a repo, yeah,
the
then
process for sandbox to spec repo is defined in the wiki, and I've got no problems with that. I think I'm fine with the discussion happening on the sandbox. My concern is things that have been defined and done are already heading in the direction of we're going to have a spec without any investigation at all.
and
That is my concern.
that's probably premature, yes.
Yeah, so I think the process would be to, yeah, have it in the sandbox, work in the sandbox, and those that kind of work on it in the sandbox can hopefully come to a general consensus about whether or not a spec should be created. I'm always of the opinion that you should bandy it about among the other steering group members ahead of time, right? To make sure that they kind of buy in before we actually go to a spec creation vote, right? Create the spec and start it that way.
Right. So basically, is we just need to establish the kind of the steps. So it's in Jakarta you directly do the spec plan creation review, and then it's kind of you express the what will be in it. So looks like here like if everybody agrees, if we actually express what will be in the spec in the sandbox, and then is kind of the what's a great graduation process. So with the sandbox, do we just do a spec plan creation review, and then the people will vote? So it's the least thing I want to say is kind of a sandbox. It become a dumping ground. So basically, you put something in the sandbox and nothing happened. So we do need to have
Perfectly fine too, because that would usually indicate there's not enough interest from a wider group in the community to make something happen.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
So what I mean is putting in the sandbox, and then is kind of the basically is there's two destinations. One is maybe is no much interest. Two is there are some interest. So how can we test whether it's no much interest or there's a massive interest? So basically, is that you put something in the
sandbox are going to know, because either they're going to have one or two people doing stuff in the sandbox, or they're going to have 10s or 20s. It's going to be fairly obvious as to whether there's enough interest. And as John mentioned, it's like if anyone working on a particular, irrespective of open telemetry or anything else, working on something in the sandbox and is trying to reach out to other vendors that are on the steering committee to get buy-in and input, and if they're just not interested, well, then that kind of indicates there's not an appetite for a spec right now.
So you are suggesting actually is not by how useful the solution is by how many people participate, right? Is if there's
well, it's kind of the same, because if people find it interesting and useful, they're going to participate.
Is sometimes maybe the kind of people find it interesting but just don't have time.
Someone's got to do the work.
Yeah, if it's kind of but in some specs, maybe it's just 2 or 3 people do the work, and then it's kind of the other people, consume the work. We haven't, yeah, we haven't got like one spec. You got a lot of people working on it, do we? The other thing is this is kind of probably fall into my questions. How can we encourage more innovation? And how, I mean, just thinking like since the last year, or maybe in the 2019, I mean, how many like initiative or innovation we have done in MicroProfile? How many new specs been proposed?
Is that really a critical measure though? Because just because innovation isn't happening inside MicroProfile doesn't mean it's not happening other places.
Yeah, so this is kind of maybe it's a revisit mission statement for MicroProfile. Like how can we demonstrate to the consumers we are actively working on like new things and etc. Right? So it's
sorry, Emily. Let me share one thought that I have been having for a while. We have not had many things happening in MicroProfile, but life continues, and companies and services evolve, and the requirements evolve, and this is why observability is so critical for me, because if you don't have observability, you cannot do more important things. So the purpose of any company is not just to have pretty logs on Grafana and or traces on Niagara and so on, is to actually have an idea of what's going on. And right now, this provides just crude data. What application, so APMs do, so like things like New Relic and so on, do is aggregate that in a standard way and provide a bunch of SLAs based on those metrics. And it's very hard for a company that either is small or doesn't want to go the APM way to actually have SLAs defined in a simple way. Everyone has to go there and define everything from scratch. So one evolution of having proper metrics and integrated things like this would be to create, for example, in the future, eventually, some spec related with SLAs and how we measure performance on microservices. And that I can see that easily being a spec that can be implemented across multiple vendors, because, well, it's kind of harsh because you'll be able to compare vendors, but well, it's useful because companies don't have to scratch their head every time from the beginning on how to define SLAs and so on. So this is the kind of thing that I would be interested on, for example. You see, and everything starts with observability. And I believe that even if vendors don't have interest on it, people that use those tools have.
Yes, I mean,
I would say that's out of the realm of MicroProfile, given that MicroProfile is focused on application developer APIs. And what you're describing there is very much like outside the realm of an application and more about an entire environment.
However,
it's microservices though.
Really disagree in this because nowadays, when you want to implement a microservice environment, I had that done the last 2 years in a big project with more than 450 developers. Without observability and tracing, you got lost within a microservice environment. And this is not only a topic to the ops department, it's also to the developer, provide the information to run the microservices properly.
Okay, that might be the case. However, OpenTelemetry is defining the place and the way to observe applications. If we were to come up with anything else, it would be completely incompatible with what any of the APM vendors are doing themselves. They are all heavily active in OpenTelemetry and defining what observability is. If we come up with our own thing that's completely divorced and separate from that, we're in a world of hurt. We just need to be part of that community and follow what they're doing and either provide ideas or input to them directly or just take what they provide.
Yeah, that's a good idea too, of course.
So as a conclusion, I mean, this is taking. I'll let you. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I say something before you draw the conclusion? So I think it's good to get involved in the upstream. However, in the downstream, what I can see is how can you get is kind of the integration with the CDI, integration with the JAX-RS. One the beauty with the MicroProfile open tracing is you don't need to do anything. You use JAX-RS, all of your traces span correlated, so you get one tracer. So in the MicroProfile, in the OpenTelemetry, some other observability providers such as the New Relic and etc. So they can understand the format of OpenTelemetry. So all we are doing is make a cloud native developer's job a lot easier. So basically, they just write their JAX-RS applications, and MicroProfile came in and automatically, understand all these trace spans and etc. And then do the similar way to correlate this trace ID and create one tracer. So it's and then you can in the cloud you can use any the provider to be able to understand the OpenTelemetry format.
Okay, so we're talking like cross purposes here. SLAs, SLOs is totally something that MP should not be involved in. It needs to work with OpenTelemetry for that. Saying what we're doing is cloud native is a load of BS. CNCF is cloud native. We might be looking to add CDI and JAX-RS things on top, which is fine, but that's not cloud native. That's on top of cloud native. If we want to do something around CDI specifically for OpenTelemetry, maybe that fits. But to be honest, right now, I'm not 100% convinced that there's any benefit in that, given that everything, I'm trying to think, I think everything that I've done so far has been accessible statically. So I don't see any advantage to providing a way to inject things when it's just a static method call to get the same thing.
Can you, if you write a JAX-RS application, without any line code, can you get all the trace ID propagated? So basically it's OpenTelemetry, all this kind of if you use the OpenTelemetry, all the traces span kind of linked together and become one tracer.
If you link them, yeah.
Yes, because that's the runtime that provides that behavior for you, right? You don't really require a spec to provide tracing or telemetry for that, right?
Right. So here in MicroProfile, basically we can unify the runtime implementation. When you say runtime, probably you mean Quarkus. So it's so basically it's kind of the beauty of the MicroProfile is portability, right? So it's you get it, you got observe the behavior in Quarkus, and also when you use some other runtime and implement a MicroProfile specs, also you could get that behavior.
Yes,
so
but what Kenny's saying,
like maybe we expect these spans to be created as child blah blah blah. You don't necessarily need a spec or API for any of that. You can just define, given a certain use case or situation, this is what you would expect the trace to look like.
Yeah, so and one other thing that Ken is saying is, let's just say if you come and MicroProfile just comes and says, hey, we're just going to use OpenTelemetry as is, then it means that the runtime should provide an OpenTelemetry environment. So for instance, Quarkus will provide OpenTelemetry, Liberty can provide OpenTelemetry, and it will work in the exact same way, because the backend implementation is OpenTelemetry. Of course, you're going to maybe have different versions, but that's a completely different topic. But in the end, what Ken is saying that right now, and unless there is some investigation work done to figure out if a spec is really necessary to use OpenTelemetry.
Exactly.
Right.
If MicroProfile cannot provide any additional benefit to OpenTelemetry, we can't create a spec because we don't know what to put
Well,
in
I mean,
right?
MicroProfile can just simply say we use OpenTelemetry as is, right? And that's it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if there is, sorry, and if there is no user-facing parts of the spec, like say that you need to use an annotation or need to implement something. So if it's only like Jakarta REST interceptors or filters that needs to be implemented in the runtime itself, then indeed there is not much benefit of a spec. But that needs to be investigated, yes. Of course.
Yeah, so for instance, in conclusion, and because we're running out of time, so sorry about this, is I believe that we should move forward with the sandbox project. And Emily, you were asking about having people to help. I mean, we've seen like Bruno and Jan stating their opinions, and I think their opinions are really very, very valid because they're not representing vendors, they're representing jugs, and they're actually consumers of our technology. So I think they definitely have, and I think at least Bruno is very interested in contributing to that. It will be ideally if we could find more of these kind of audience where they're actually consuming the technology and help us shape it. And so just move on with the sandbox, start some work over there, do some trials, see how that goes, and then we can figure out if we really require to have a spec or not, or if we can just adopt the technology as is.
I think is kind of at the end of the day, we need to agree on the process. Also, we need to look at the other like a program plan technical goals about the other specs and etc. I think is yeah, if we just say okay, we use the sandbox and just start a conversation, and then we just get a general consensus to see whether we want to like take a further step and to create a spec creation and etc. And then we can go there if we say okay, not interested, and then that's it. I think yeah, I'm fine with it. But I think it's kind of all these kind of the new not new. The new spec ideas documented in the technical goals need to be looked at it.
We'll look into the other. I mean, we're running out of time today, so we can have a look into the other topics in the next call. Anyway, so for now on OpenTelemetry, so we all agree that we should do the work in the sandbox. Hopefully, Bruno and Jan can help on that, and then we'll figure out what are the next steps. Until we have some more information about that particular piece of work.
Can I add one like small thing there, that we maybe archive the MP OpenTelemetry repo that was created so that we don't cause confusion by having that there?
Okay, I will get that archived for now, and then if we decide to do that, and then we can always bring the activity.
Okay, so we are out of time for today. So thank you so much for joining and the contribution. We'll see each other again in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Hey. Bye.
And I will upload the video for your viewing pleasure again sometime later today.
Erin was there and I haven't seen her and she didn't mention anything. Come on, Erin. Why didn't you say something?
I came really late because this is I have kid pickup time, so it's just like I had to kind of.
Speaking of that, I gotta go.
Yeah. I was hoping that you were joined, but because I was sharing screen, I couldn't see you. And
it's okay.
Sorry about that.
Ken told me, no, it's all right.
You should have just come in and say something.
I usually can be counted on to do that.
Oh man. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.